Good evening, I'm Laura Lee. Thanks for joining us tonight. Should the gray wolf be delisted as an endangered species? U.S. lawmakers are one step closer to answering that controversial question after a Republican-introduced bill to remove the gray wolf from the endangered list passed through the House this week. Northern News Now's Madison Green attended a meeting in Sandstone, Minnesota today where groups from both sides addressed the issue.
Northland lawmakers discussed why the wolf should be delisted as an endangered species.
We have heard from hunters, farmers, ranchers, pet owners that have had their livestock and their pets being killed, and I think that now's the time to act. In fact, the time to act was a while ago. U.S.
Representative Pete Stauber, who serves northern Minnesota, is one congressman pushing for the bill, called the Trust the Science Act. The DNR said wolves in Minnesota are fully recovered and should no longer be listed as threatened in Minnesota. Stauber agrees.
We know the numbers are healthy. The numbers, the science has showed us that they've recovered. And what we want to do is, when we delist them, allow the states to manage the wolf population in relation to what their state's needs are.
He believes as long as the bill makes it on the Senate floor, it will pass. But others are calling for the Senate to stop the bill from moving forward.
They desperately need those federal protections to stay in place to protect them from these state management programs that will open up recreational hunting and trapping.
Jill Fritz, a Minnesota resident and senior director at the Humane Society of the United States, also attended the meeting. She says all of the hard numbers can't be taken literally when talking about wolf population recovery.
Reaching that number is just the beginning. Then the Fish and Wildlife Service has to determine, does that species face a hostile environment when they're returned to the state management that will prevent them from continuing to recover.
Asking questions only time can tell. In Sandstone, Madison Green, Northern News Now.
Madison, thank you. Now, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service administers the Endangered Species Act. We asked for their thoughts on the Trust the Science bill. They declined to comment. No word on exactly when the Senate could vote.